So let's go to Independent Women's Forum Director of Policy, Hadley Heath Manning, Hillary Clinton campaign advisor, Jake McAbee, and a New York City Council Minority Whip, Joe Borelli. Joe, is this a concern, first off, the judge thing? If he never gets through and then people go back and say, well, it was because of your comments about the accuser, Mr. President?
I don't think the blame's going to fall on President Trump for failing to confirm Judge Kavanaugh. I mean, I think he's been as vocal of a supporter of Judge Kavanaugh as a president possibly could be. I think Dr. Ford has been sort of a third rail for Republicans in criticizing her for a while. But as the investigation goes forward, as more public evidence comes out, as more leaks come out, you can begin to question it because none of it seems to add up. And when none of it adds up, you know, unfortunately, the microscope then goes on you.
Do you worry about the women voters who are going to not like that?
No, because if you look at a poll out in Missouri about Claire McCaskill, half of voters, not half of Republican voters, but half of voters have come out and said that her opposition to Judge Kavanaugh is a reason that they're not going to vote for her.
Jake, another issue has come up on reaction to the judge and how he handled those criticisms last week. I think Hillary Clinton said it was his temperament that came into question. Along comes Orrin Hatch with an article today in the Wall Street Journal, an editorial in which he said it was righteous anger on the part of Judge Kavanaugh. What do you think?
Well, look, if it was righteous anger, it was pretty petulant righteous anger. I think there are three things that that senators are going to be looking at when they take this vote.
But I've heard, like, you know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when she has attacked the president, is that righteous anger?
Well, she didn't do it in a job interview, certainly, and not with the Supreme Court.
Even worse, on the Supreme Court.
Well, they didn't go through her high school yearbook either.
Here's what I would be concerned about if I'm a senator looking at this. Number one, I'd be concerned about allegations of sexual assault. There's already one person on the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, who has been accused of sexual harassment, and I'd be concerned about adding a second. Two, I would be very...
Just if they're accused.
Excuse me?
Just if they're accused. The accusal alone is enough to recuse.
I think it is. No. I think it is enough to make me concerned. Number two is about candor. And there are a number of instances in his testimony, in Judge Kavanaugh's testimony, where he said things that sort of strain credulity. So I'd be nervous about... What? For example, when he talks about, you know, the meanings of things in his high school yearbook, which shouldn't be a big deal, except if you say things that don't really add up. When he talks about Ralphing as being about eating spicy foods, it doesn't make sense.
Wait a minute, it's not about eating spicy foods?
Well, no, I would suggest not. Number three, I'd be concerned about his temperament.
Okay.
Exactly
I think, and you know, Dick did stop himself there to say, this is what it's come to, where we go through yearbook writings and the like. But someone was actually telling me they're trying to get the judge on perjury here because he understated just how much he drank. And I thought to myself, wow, that's veering way off course here. But maybe it's just the nature of the beast. What do you think?
Yeah, it suggests there's a moving of the goalposts going on. You know, I sympathize with Americans who are concerned about, you know, women being able to bring their accusations forward. It's the world has been dangerous for women in that we are more likely to be the victims of sexual violence. But President Trump recently asserting that this is a dangerous time for young men, that's a fair point, too. But the good news is we don't have to choose. We don't have to choose sides between men and women or between victims of sexual assault or people who are facing accusations.
Shut up, right? Don't you think he should have just, on that, just keep it quiet? Until
on the Ralphing point?
No. On the president not commenting on the accuser, period. Don't.
Oh, he certainly shouldn't have made fun of Dr. Ford or disrespected her in any way. I mean, we're at a critical point culturally where the Me Too movement has encouraged more women to come forward when they have been mistreated, and that's a good thing. But that doesn't mean we should tip the scales of justice in the opposite
I appreciate
direction.
That. I'm not saying there's the badger one way or the other, but Joe Borelli, I thought the president complicated things for some of those Republican senators on the fence. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, included even Jeff Flake, who were all critical of his response.
The only thing we can be certain about Susan Collins and Jeff Flake is that whichever way the wind blowing on the day of the vote, that's the way they're going to vote. You know, but just to go back to Jake's
fair
point,
to them. They've made some brave votes.
They have in the past, and I'm not talking you know, necessarily about those. I'm talking about the fact that this is going to come to a head this week. Mitch McConnell's going to push a vote, and they're going to have to vote up or down. And look how far the Democrats have come. Last week on the show, it was as predictable as the Yankees winning their playoff spot tonight. We said they're going to move the goalposts.
We just lost the Oakland audience here.
We didn't even have time to wipe the crust out of our eye on Monday morning, and the Democrats were already moving.
Well, let me ask you about that, Jake. I mean, Hillary Clinton was commenting on this about the temperament thing and this other issue. And that's the latest thing the Democrats are seizing on. But don't you think it is distinctly possible that these Democrats up for re-election in big Trump states, obviously Joe Manchin is mentioned, Heidi Heitkamp, obviously in North Dakota, would be under enormous pressure to vote for the judge.
So here's what I say is the great news for anybody watching this, is that it doesn't have to be Judge Kavanaugh or no one. The president could nominate somebody else who would be extremely acceptable to these Democrats in tough races. But I think as it stands now, all those Democrats have excellent reasons, and not just reasons, but responsibilities to vote against this nominee, because there have been so many questions raised.
But would it hurt the ones who are in those states that the president won big to not vote for the judge?
I think that most people in most states will appreciate a senator who stands up and takes a stand and can say, you know what, I've looked at all of this, I have concerns, and so I'd rather that the president nominate somebody else.
I've mentioned many brave senators in the past on both ends of the aisle, and the brave vote sometimes doesn't necessarily get you the win here. But you know, Hadley, I'm just wondering how the president deals with all of this. Of course, you're going to have a briefing with this New York Times story. It's going to come up about whether he inflated his own role in the wealth that he accumulated. It turns out it might have been more his dad than he. And the way that wealth was done, or whether the IRS was skirted in this. Now, of course, knowing a little bit about him, having covered him for many decades, the IRS keeps a close eye on real estate titans and those who acquire a lot of wealth. There might have been other things that come up, and that obviously New York State officials are investigating. But I think for the president, the big thing is more the ego hit here on the minimal role he said his father had in his financial life was just not the case. What do you think?
Well, this story certainly puts President Trump back at the center of our politics, and that's something that I believe Democrats, that's a goal of theirs, to make the midterm elections more or less a referendum on President Trump. But aside from the personality politics and aside from questions about President Trump's personal wealth, you know, this midterm election season is also about the issues. It's about tax reform, it's about health care, it's about immigration. Those are issues on top of voters' minds as well. So whether or not that story influences any voters, I think is not going to have the impact that Democrats are hoping.
Well, I always also use Wall Street as a proxy. Not always an accurate one, Joe, but we talked about it, we have as well. And right now, the markets seem more impressed with these good earnings, with the trade deal with Canada, and maybe avoiding a trade war with China in the last step of this process. And that's all that seems to matter. So either they are not worried about Judge Kavanaugh becoming Justice Kavanaugh, they don't know, but we'll see.